After some time, he reached the destination and began to check the traps. Unfortunately, the first trap was empty, which disappointed him. This area, close to a river, is frequently visited by animals, and he had high hopes for it. However, it was disappointing. He continued to check the remaining traps, but luck was not on his side. A rabies outbreak last year had significantly reduced the fox population, explaining the empty traps. While thinking, Eric noticed fox tracks on the ground, leading to one of his traps. This discovery was encouraging. He rushed over and found that the trap had not disappointed him. It contained a caught Arctic fox. Its fluffy fur was very beautiful. The new trap, with its impressive power, had snapped the fox's neck instantly. Eric decided to leave the trap in place, hoping for more success. He then returned home with the Arctic fox. Today, he made $250, a decent profit. Hunting must keep up with the times. In the radio, the sound of a dying rabbit was playing, simulating a rabbit's cry for help. Eric just needed to wait patiently. Soon, the first unsuspecting victim appeared, a large gray wolf that observed quietly from about 500 or 600 meters away. Wolves are notoriously cunning and won't approach rashly if something seems amiss. But Eric could move toward it, causing the wolf to become alert, a true apex predator. Eric continued to approach slowly, and the wolf chose to retreat, puzzled by the human emitting rabbit sounds. It couldn't resist looking back, only to be met with a cold bullet. Unfortunately, Eric missed, and the wolf ran off quickly. Though he felt the shot hadn't hit, Eric decided to follow to see if the wolf was wounded, as it wouldn't survive long if injured. After chasing for 4 kilometers, Eric had to face reality. He had overthought it and lost a pelt worth $1,500, which deeply upset him. That ended his hunting for the day. The next day, Eric returned to the same spot and continued playing the rabbit sounds. Before long, the second unfortunate creature appeared, hopping toward him. It panicked upon seeing Eric, turned and ran, but it was too late. Eric shot it down. A beautiful red fox with sleek, shiny fur, a fine trophy. But Eric wasn't done yet. Soon a third unlucky creature showed up, a rare and precious deep red fox, a rarity in the fox world, often called a beauty. Eric trembled with excitement, but at the crucial moment, his gun jammed due to the cold weather. The elegant little fox made a graceful escape, its fleeing posture enchanting. But once Eric fixed his gun, he took a successful shot. Approaching the fox, Eric admired its fluffy fur and slender form. Embarrassingly, he realized he had mistaken the gender. It was a male. Yet true beauty knows no gender. Its limbs and belly were black, and so was its tail, except for the white tip. The more he looked, the more fascinated he became. Although he was still depressed about missing the gray wolf the previous day, capturing 2 foxes today somewhat mitigated his losses. Eric's mood gradually improved. He was thankful for the rabbit lure. Truly, technology is the leading productive force. Back home, Eric needed to process the fur quickly. Only by skinning the foxes completely could he consider the hunt perfectly concluded. Eric did some calculations. The cost of fuel and bullets was around $10. The common red fox could bring in $10. The common red fox could bring in $150, while the rare deep red fox could sell for about $400. If he found a collector who was passionate about such items, the price might even be higher. Therefore, Eric was especially careful not to make any mistakes that could damage the fur and reduce its value. He remembered his childhood when fox pelts sold for only $10 each. The income from a whole year of hard work back then didn't amount to as much as he could earn now from one deep red fox pelt. This thought made Eric wryly smile. A few days ago, Andy hunted a moose and solved his food problem, which made him very happy. This morning, snowflakes began to fall, signaling the arrival of winter. Andy planned to go to a nearby pond to catch beavers, as it is still hunting season and shooting is allowed. Unlike other hoofed animals, beavers have a keen sense of smell and usually appear at dawn or late at night. Andy wasn't sure if he would encounter them today, but it didn't matter as he could try again in the evening. He carried a .22 caliber rifle for beavers and a .325 rifle in case he encountered a bear. On his way, Andy saw signs of beavers chewing on aspen trees. There was a promising beaver pond ahead. He quietly began to observe and found a beaver lodge, but no beavers were visible on the water. However, Andy had a way to lure them out by knocking on the water surface, a sound that is shocking to beavers. After waiting a while, Andy had to admit the beavers were too deeply asleep, and he would have to return in the evening. By evening, the Yukon River had not yet frozen over. When the severe winter sets in, the river will be completely frozen, making boating impossible. So, Andy needed to make the most of the limited time. As soon as he arrived at the pond, he felt something was off, a hunter's intuition. He crouched and approached quietly, and to his delight, he saw a beaver playing in the water. Andy crawled forward to an ideal shooting position. The beaver was unaware of the impending danger. Andy aimed and fired decisively, hitting the target. However, the beaver did not surface as he expected. Andy then resorted to his last trick. He took out the fishing gear he had prepared and cast the hook into the water. The underwater weeds made it tricky, and he could lose the hook easily. Andy relied on his sense of touch and kept trying, but with little success. Just as he was getting frustrated, he saw bubbles on the surface. He immediately cast the hook there, and this time, he caught the beaver. It was a plump individual, weighing at least 20 kilograms. Andy was excited not only because he caught the beaver, but also because it was his first time fishing for one. He found the method very interesting. Carrying the beaver, he headed home to celebrate with a drink. In Alaska, seal meat and oil are crucial resources. Chip's family planned to visit the neighboring village of Kotzebue to hunt seals. Since Chip isn't a local, he couldn't participate in the hunt and could only watch his wife and children leave. The river had just frozen, and the seals were beginning to leave the river, making it the perfect time to hunt them. Soon, the group arrived in the neighboring village where Agnes's relatives lived. She borrowed her cousin's boat, but the shore had already frozen, making it difficult to launch the boat. They had to manually clear the ice, and after much effort, they managed to create a space. Agnes's eldest son, who had a rugged look with a small, stylish mustache, had mastered various survival skills. He skillfully started the boat, and they began to break through the ice. Moving forward, the boat gained momentum, making it easier to crack the ice. The boat moved smoothly and swiftly. Agnes and her daughter rocked the boat from side to side at the bow, speeding up the ice breaking and leaving a clear path behind. Soon, they entered ice-free waters and started searching for seals. With sharp eyes, Agnes spotted a seal from afar. Her son quickly adjusted the boat's direction, and they approached the target rapidly. Agnes aimed her gun, but the rocking boat made her miss. After reloading, she couldn't see the seal anymore as it had dived under the water. However, it needed to surface to breathe. Sure enough, after a brief wait, the seal surfaced on the right side of the boat. Agnes missed again, much to everyone's disappointment. As it got dark, they had to return to shore. The next day, although it started snowing, the temperature was warmer than the day before, and there was less ice on the river. They set out again, determined to hunt a seal today or return empty-handed, which would be a significant loss. Just as they were eagerly looking, a seal appeared. Agnes reacted quickly, but missed as the seal was faster and dove under the water. They waited patiently, and the seal surfaced again. Sadly, Agnes's shot missed again. 2 more seals surfaced, and Agnes fired without hesitation, but still missed. She began to feel frustrated. 3 seals swam towards them, seemingly to tease Agnes. Her eldest son suggested using a shotgun because it allows continuous firing. After several shots, 1 seal was hit. The boat quickly caught up, and the daughter raised a harpoon and forcefully stabbed the seal, turning the water red with blood. However, a terrible thing happened. The seal didn't surface. Anxiously, they kept trying to retrieve it from the water, but the seal disappeared. This was because the eldest daughter was inexperienced with the harpoon. The 2 began teaching her the correct way to use it, hoping she would learn from this mistake. After teaching her, they continued hunting. The seals in the area were severely frightened, so they had to move to deeper waters. After a while, another seal appeared. Agnes fired, and the seal quickly dived to escape. Her daughter gripped the harpoon, ready to act. Minutes later, the seal surfaced again. Agnes, quick with her eyes and hands, immediately shot and seemed to hit the target this time. The boat quickly approached, and her daughter raised the harpoon and threw it fiercely at the target. Her son turned to watch and saw the seal struggling. He decided to take action himself. After turning the boat around, he grabbed the harpoon and thrust it down hard, accurately hitting the target. Before the seal could sink completely, he pulled the harpoon and the seal out of the water together. To thank the seal for its sacrifice, following traditional customs, Agnes spat into the seal's mouth as a sign of respect. After 2 hard days, they finally succeeded in hunting. The group joyfully embarked on their return journey. This is Eagletown in Alaska, where Andy and his wife Kate live a self-sufficient life. They rely on fishing and hunting for food and keep over 20 sled dogs. During the snowy winters, they travel by sled. 30 years ago, when Andy first moved to Eagle, there was a large group of young people, but over time they gradually moved away. The traditional survival skills are slowly being lost, which deeply saddens Andy. Therefore, he set up a camp to teach wilderness skills. Today, a young man is coming to learn these skills. However, the moment he got off the plane, he regretted it because it was too cold here. His name is Cody, from Beaverton, Oregon, and he's a hard-working employee who finds dealing with his boss extremely boring. Wanting to experience a different life, he decided to come here. After some small talk, they started heading home. Cody sat on the sled, enjoying the roller coaster-like bumps. It was only when he saw Andy's house that he realized he had come to a remote place. The next day, as the sun rose, Cody began his training course. Andy and Kate were all smiles, understanding that they were earning tuition fees and gaining free labor. The first lesson in training was mastering various survival tools. Andy first introduced 2 rifles with different powers targeted at different game. A .22 caliber rifle for shooting squirrels, rabbits, and ducks, and another rifle for larger animals like wolves and bears. Andy then introduced various tools to give Cody a basic understanding. The second lesson was about building a shelter, as it was extremely cold and Cody's face showed signs of frostbite. Building a warm shelter was a priority. They moved a stove inside the tent, and after assembly, Cody began sawing wood. Seeing that he could handle the task, Andy went off to attend to his own duties. Here in Eagletown, Alaska, Andy and his wife Kate lead a self-sufficient life relying on fishing and hunting. They also keep over 20 sled dogs for travel in the snowy winters. 3 decades ago, when Andy first arrived, many young people lived here, but they've since moved away, leaving traditional survival skills at risk of being forgotten. This deeply concerns Andy, so he has set up a camp to teach wilderness skills. Today, a young man named Cody from Beaverton, Oregon, arrives to learn. He was excited about the rural lifestyle at first, but after sawing over 20 logs, his arms ached, and he wished for a chainsaw. Andy gave him a birch bark for starting a fire, which seemed simple but proved difficult. Struggling with the wind and failing 3 times, Cody became frustrated. He began to respect the harsh life below 0 degrees. After finally managing to start a fire, with Andy patiently teaching him, evening came, and Cody went inside the tent to light the stove, preparing for the night. After stacking the chopped wood next to the tent, Andy took him to cut branches for bedding. Andy left him to work alone, saying he would check on him the next day. Cody felt overwhelmed, having not anticipated such a life. The next day, after a restless night, Cody started a new lesson: moving the dog kennels. The dogs had dug holes in the summer, creating uneven ground that could injure their ankles in the frozen winter, so the kennels needed relocating. With Cody's help, they spent half a day moving all the kennels. The following morning, Andy finally began teaching the real skills. Today's lesson was dog sledding, something Cody had long anticipated. Andy gave him a few safety tips, equipped him with 4 dogs, including an experienced leader. Cody, inexperienced, struggled to manage the scene, but with Kate's help, he soon had the sled team ready. At Andy's command, they set off with Cody following, shouting in fear as the sled sped along, worried about crashing into a tree. Despite his fears, the sled successfully navigated through the forest. Andy waited and was relieved to see Cody arrive safely. After sharing experiences, they continued along the frozen river, where Cody began to enjoy the thrill of dog sledding, the reason he'd left the city. Returning home, Cody felt a sense of accomplishment and hugged the sled dogs in gratitude for their effort. On the 3rd day, the weather grew colder, but for Cody, it was a day full of inner warmth. He was set to lead the sled team alone without Andy. Once he was fully dressed, he led the team out. Today went smoother than the previous day, and he felt less nervous. However, accidents happen when least expected. As he was exiting the forest, he was thrown violently from the sled. Fortunately, the snow cushioned his fall, preventing any injuries. After resting for a while and calming his excited heart, he resumed his journey. With a newfound respect, he became more cautious and managed the sled with skill. He returned home successfully, marking the day as incredibly meaningful. That night, they took some dried fish from the fish rack to feed the sled dogs. Hearing the dogs chewing, Cody felt immensely satisfied. He was grateful for the dogs' efforts, which greatly enriched his rural Alaskan experience. This trip to Alaska was truly worthwhile. This man is tough. He wears a wolf pelt as a scarf, its fluffy fur providing exceptional warmth. Here in the Arctic Circle of Alaska, the Brooks Range has fully entered the harsh winter. Food is extremely scarce. Driven by hunger, a pack of wolves has come close to Eric's home, presenting a prime hunting opportunity. Wolves, among Alaska's top predators, are feared killers, but a single wolf pelt can fetch up to $1,500, making them a target for hunters. Eric, carrying an automatic rifle, rides his snowmobile deep into the mountains. Hunting wolves is his favorite winter pastime and satisfies his spiritual needs. Wolves are smart and cunning, aware of human weaponry. They flee at the sound of machinery, so Eric has to stop his snowmobile and track them on foot. Fortunately, it doesn't take long before he spots 3 wolves about 900 meters away. Unaware of the danger, they move slowly. Eric takes aim quietly, feeling the timing is right, and pulls the trigger. Unfortunately, he misses, startling the wolves into a frantic escape. However, Eric remains calm. A decade of hunting has honed his preference for moving targets. Despite firing several shots, each hits only air as the wolves run further away, leaving Eric slightly embarrassed in the swirling wind. He blames the miss on the distance, but is not one to give up. Continuing his search on the snowmobile, he soon spots a solitary large male gray wolf, about 600 or 700 meters away. Eric dismounts and approaches slowly, advantaged by the downwind position hiding his scent. When he gets within 400 meters, he crouches and aims. The wolf, still unaware of the danger but shielded by a snowdrift, doesn't offer a clear shot. Eric waits for a better opportunity, which arises when the wolf, possibly sensing danger, turns to leave. This triggers Eric's nerves, and he fires a fatal shot. At the moment of impact, adrenaline surges, and the wolf runs at full speed. Eric fires again but misses. After a third shot, the wolf finally falls. Hunting wolves stirs complex feelings. While they symbolize the wilderness and deserve respect, managing their numbers is necessary for ecological balance. Examination reveals the first shot hit the hind leg, slowing the wolf, and the second bullet struck the neck, killing it instantly. Eric lifts the wolf, standing slowly to give it the last respect. This season, he has encountered 6 wolves. This is his first catch. Eric steps carefully towards his snowmobile, the gray wolf resting peacefully on his shoulder, its spirit remaining in the wilderness. The Hailstone family leads a life primarily based on fishing and hunting, relying entirely on nature's provisions. Their diligent efforts have raised 5 beautiful daughters. One snowy morning, the Chip couple decided to check the river to see the state of this year's freeze, which was delayed by a month compared to previous years, preventing them from fishing. It is too dangerous if the ice is less than 5 centimeters thick. For the Hailstones, ice fishing is the most crucial time of the year, as lack of fish not only leads to a shortage of food, but also economic loss. This is the Kobuk River, wide and deep, a traditional fishing spot for generations of fishermen, but it has also claimed many lives, including several of Agnes's relatives. Whenever she recalls these tragedies, she feels immense pain, a grief that never fades from her heart. Agnes measured the ice and found it only 3 to 5 centimeters thick with layers like shale, which is not sturdy enough. They decided to return the next day. Back home, they found the fishing net severely frozen, all bunched up. This 45-meter-long net needed to be untangled urgently, as it would be indispensable for fishing if conditions improved the next day. The family pulled the 500-pound net inside together, illustrating the benefits of having many children and the strength of working together. The next day, Chip and his wife set out again for ice fishing, their main source of winter income, which they take very seriously. Today, the ice seemed thick enough, about 10 centimeters, but as they approached the river's center, it thinned to just 5 centimeters. This thinning was due to the snow on the surface preventing the ice from thickening. Chip poked the ice with a stick and it immediately cracked, causing Agnes to scream and run away. Although the current ice could support a person walking freely, supporting several hundred pounds of a fishing net still posed a significant risk, so they had to wait patiently. During this time, the couple planned to do something else. They have a good friend named Kevin who often helps them. He once provided a boat generator that helped the Hailstone family hunt for beavers, reindeer, and moose. To show their appreciation, they decided to make a seal skin vest for him. The residents here rely on bartering to survive, and reputation is a crucial quality. If the Hailstone family did not return the favor, they would lose credibility in the community. Chip was collecting alderbark, which can dye fur a bright red and help make leather more durable. It also adds a natural fragrance, making it a very practical material. The skin was from a young seal. Agnes has 4 tools for processing fur. Her favorite is an inherited ecun from her mother, meaning fur scraper. Using it, she could remove excess membranes from the fur. She and her 9 sisters used to gather around their mother to learn her scraping techniques. While Agnes was reminiscing about her mother, Chip returned with some alder wood. He began to peel the bark with a knife, then boiled the cut bark in a barrel. Agnes then sanded the fur again to remove rough membranes. Usually Chip would handle other types of fur, but by law, only Inuit Agnes and their children could process seal skins, so Chip could only watch. Just then, their 2 young daughters returned. They sat down to learn the craft, ensuring the ancestral skills were passed down. Once the scraping was done, it was time to dye. Chip took down the iron barrel, holding back branches while pouring water, and then they began dyeing. Agnes left this task to her daughters, as mastering these skills was essential for their survival in Alaska and for passing on Inuit traditions. Dyeing required patience, even on uneven parts, to ensure an even color. To maintain traditional styles, Agnes used only natural materials. She took a piece of meat from a reindeer, cut along the edge, and obtained a clean tendon, which she laid out to dry naturally. Then, Agnes marked the dimensions on the seal skin and began cutting. The young girls watched intently, knowing they would soon be cutting garments themselves. From the reindeer, once the membrane and fat layer were removed, the material would tear easily into strips. Twisting these strips and dabbing them with saliva, they made rope for sewing the garments. Soon, the small vest was nearly complete but still needed buttons. So, she drove to Chuck's store, bought some ivory buttons carved into whale eyes, and paid with a deer antler. Agnes was very pleased with the beautiful buttons. Back home, she sewed the buttons onto the vest. At that moment, the seal skin vest was complete. It was not just a garment, but a symbol of friendship, and she believed Kevin would love it. At the Kavik River camp, Sue received a package delivered by pilot Bob. She asked him to take her along to see how close carnivores were to her camp. The weather had been unusually warm, potentially affecting animal habits. From the air, the desolation was extreme. They patrolled along the coastline and spotted 2 polar bears only 50 kilometers from the camp, easily within walking distance. Due to the warming temperatures, polar bears struggle to hunt seals on the ice, leading them to search for food along the coast. Sue looked worried. She had seen several polar bears already. As the sun was setting, they had to return to camp. The cold could handle the animal problem, but Sue faced her own challenge. Her old wounds from a grizzly bear attack were acting up. To ease the pain, she went out to collect branches containing salicylic acid, a natural pain reliever. She cut the branches, steeped them in hot water to make tea, and lay down to rest while drinking it. However, after a long rest, she felt no relief, and her back pain was so severe it brought her to tears. She needed real medical treatment. So she contacted Bob again, asking him to buy some medicine even though it would cost her $1,000. Sue waited outside, too weak to clear the runway. When she saw the plane, she instructed Bob not to land but to drop the medicine without hitting her head. Fortunately, her concerns were unfounded. Sue thanked Bob, then took the medicine back to her cabin to recover as quickly as possible. The camp couldn't function without her. This wasn't just a job but a responsibility. After all, her location was an important rescue and supply station. She needed to stay at her post. This man is tough. In a snowy, icy environment, he bathes naked, displaying a remarkable display of masculinity. His name is Glenn, and he lives 320 kilometers north of Fairbanks, in the Brooks Range. Since 1999, he has led a self-sufficient life, relying on hunting and foraging, and prefers primitive techniques, using only axes and handsaws to chop wood, with food coming directly from nature. This summer, he went to the city to spend time with his family. Now, with winter arriving, he is ready to begin his secluded life. He wears special snowshoes that allow him to walk effortlessly through the snow. However, with much luggage to transport, he has to make several trips. Upon seeing his cabin, Glenn hesitates because there might be grizzly bear activity around, and one may even have entered his cabin. Gathering courage, he strides forward and notices grizzly bear fur caught on the doorframe and claw marks on the door. It seems a grizzly has visited but didn't get inside. To be safe, Glenn circles the cabin to inspect. Typically, grizzly bears would be hibernating at this time, but occasionally, one or two wake and look for food. Fortunately, the cabin is undamaged. He unlocks and pushes open the door. Everything inside is as he left it. He then goes to the landing area to bring his luggage home in batches. By the time he finishes, it has gotten completely dark, and the temperature has dropped sharply. To safely get through the night, he needs to start a fire quickly. First, he clears the snow from the chimney, revealing a round hole, then sets up the chimney pipe and chops some firewood. Once ready, he begins fire starting by friction. Holding a reindeer antler blowpipe in his mouth and fitting the other end over the spindle, he rapidly rotates the spindle with a rope. This intense friction generates heat, and soon smoke and sparks appear. He places the sparks into tinder and easily ignites the fire with a few puffs from the blowpipe, finally bringing some warmth to the cabin. He then steps outside, brings in a pot of snow, and slowly heats it over the fire until he has about a third of a bucket of water. Drinking the hot water, he feels immensely comfortable. The next day, he placed a full basin of snow over the fire to melt. The snow visibly decreased at a fast rate. This small amount of water was enough to quench his thirst, but not sufficient for other needs. So, he put on his snowshoes and trudged through the thick snow to the frozen lake. Despite the temperature being minus 34 degrees Celsius, he had to remove his heavy coat while working to avoid sweating and getting cold. He planned to dig a square hole, but first needed to clear the snow from the ice surface. Simply punching a hole without clearing could cause the surrounding snow to harden, complicating matters. After all, he intended to use this ice hole throughout the winter. He quickly cleared a 3-meter square area. Before starting, he performed an important ritual by donning a mask, similar to those used by robbers, which shielded from the wind and kept him warm. Then, he began to strike the ice. Chiseling an ice hole was not an easy task. Glenn swung vigorously, his strikes echoing across the lake, turning the silent wilderness into a symphony of sounds. Ice chips flew in all directions with each powerful blow, creating a spectacular scene. Before long, he had chiseled a small pit several centimeters deep, his hair covered in frost. As he deepened the hole, he could feel the water underneath vibrating slightly. Sure enough, after a heavy strike, water suddenly gushed out. He quickly jumped up and hammered a few more times to speed up the process. The sound of the water rushing out was pleasing to the ear. Soon, the entire ice hole was filled with water. However, Glenn had to completely break the bottom of the hole to prevent it from freezing over again. His gloves, wet from the splashing water, froze to the ice rod. Now the water surface was covered with ice chunks. He used a slush scoop to remove them. The lake water was so clear that he usually drank it directly. Glenn transported the water home and heated it, finally ready to comfortably take a hot bath. He stripped off all his clothes, took the hot water outside, and began his bath, enjoying the intense, invigorating sensation. It was as stimulating as it could get. By the time he was dressed and returned to the lake, the ice hole had refrozen, about 1 or 2 centimeters thick. He piled snow over the ice hole for insulation to prevent it from freezing too quickly, making it easier to access water next time. In a remote village in Norfolk, Alaska, a puppy happily plays with 2 crows. Early in the morning, Chip sets out to chop wood so he doesn't have to burn fuel oil in the stove. Fuel is scarce here, costing $1.60 per liter, and every penny saved on fuel Chip spends on household expenses. His sled is slightly damaged. He uses a drill to screw nails into the wooden boards for reinforcement, then prepares to leave with his chainsaw. However, Finding the chainsaw stuck, he hands it to his daughter and picks up his only other tool, an axe, to start his journey. Winters here last 8 months and consume a lot of wood. Soon, he reaches the edge of the forest and finds a fallen tree. Swinging his sharp axe with all his strength, he combines power with technique to make the work efficient. He must swing the axe in a full arc for effectiveness. After numerous swings, he throws the axe aside, lifts the wood, and places one end on the sled. He continues chopping, and after dozens more swings, a second tree falls. He picks a few more dry trees, works for a while, and as it gets dark, he rides his snowmobile back home. The wood he gathered will be enough for 3 days and nights.